Hello?
Hello, Jughead. This is Archie. Come over right away. It's a matter of life or death.
Oh, relax, Archie.
Attention, all true believers. Marvel Comics is on the air.
A friend of the unfortunate, enemy of criminals. In reality, Dan Garrett, a rookie patrolman, loved by everyone but suspected by none of being the Blue Beetle.
Boys and girls, your attention, please. Presenting a new exciting radio program featuring the thrilling adventures of an amazing and incredible personality. Faster than an airplane, more powerful than a locomotive, impervious to bullets.
Up in the sky, look! It's a bird! It's a plane! It's Superman!
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, the internet? It's good to see you. That's weird. Anyway, this show has the potential to be more off the rails than the show that started with me pouring water down the front of me during this segment of the show, and then having to sit here like drenched for the whole episode. This episode also has the potential to be the single nerdiest thing that has ever aired on this incredibly nerdy YouTube channel. Like, I want you to understand exactly how dumb this could get in terms of the nerd level. It could get so nerdy that the teacher, who is played by Ben Stein in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, would go, "You guys maybe need to put some excitement in your voice." That's how nerdy this episode of this show could get. This is Kyle and Jay's Q&A. I am Kyle. Jay is backstage. We are here to answer your Qs. And today we are going to be talking about data. Thank you, Rob. I appreciate that. Anyhow, we're going to be talking about data. We're also going to be talking about what you can learn from data and what your comics are trying to tell you and how informative all of that can be if you just use it friggin' right. So, sit back, relax, get your pocket protectors out, get some tape, put them around the rim of your glasses. If this was an 80s movie, become really problematic when you think back on it. This is Kyle and Jay's Q&A. Derek got my reference. Pat, who's in the background, Derek got my reference. Anyway, welcome in, everybody. Welcome to Kyle and Jay's Q&A. I am Kyle. That is Jay. You have Qs, we have As, and not just the ones we're sitting on. I've been saving that one for a while now.
Nice.
Yeah. Welcome in to the show. I want to start with something, and we're going to bring one of our first guests on while we wait for our other guest to join us. But I want to. We talked about something when I was in the comments on the Hydra Hangout this week.
Yes.
That we said we would address with everybody at the top of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to bring our first guest on while we wait for our second guest. And we're going to talk to him. Oh man, you did it. He did it. This is going to be great. This is why I have this person around in my life, by the way. This person you may recognize as being the spokesmodel for frozen vegetables. You may also recognize him from the many, many times he's been on the channel. He is part of the Monday night train wreck that doesn't happen as often on Monday nights as I would like it to. And he is the person that I hold responsible for Cherry Capital Comic Con, ladies and gentlemen, Pat Koala.
Thank you.
I
mean,
can't believe
you
you
said
did that.
tape up the glasses, so
I can't believe you did that. So Saturday night on the Hydra Hangout, we talked about the color codes for Free Comic Book Day. And it sort of sparked this idea for this episode. I got to say, because I started thinking about what are your comics trying to tell you? And so I reached out to a buddy of mine who I'm going to bring on now, who is perhaps the foremost expert in the world on what the one thing you can't read with your naked eyes on a comic book is trying to tell you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in Brian Garside from Manage Comics.
The foremost expert in the world. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, does anyone know more than you about what barcodes mean?
At this point, nobody alive, I think.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So the topic tonight really is, what are your comics trying to tell you that you don't know they're trying to tell you? And this started with the color codes of Free Comic Book Day books, which is not something people think about. But at the top in the Free Comic Book Day logo, there are 3 and sometimes 4 different color codes, and they each break down a different thing. So there's green, which is an all ages comic, which is good for kids. There's blue, which is a everyone can read comic. There's red, which is an adult. And there used to be, and there may be again in the future, purple, which is you should maybe check those people's ID before you let them walk out with those books. I'm looking at you, Boundless Comics. So that's something that is embedded in your comics that you don't necessarily think about, where your comics are trying to inform you about what's in the comic. Right? I really want to talk about data. I've wanted to talk about data, so I brought Pat, who's a data nerd, Jay, who just is a sponge for these kind of things, and again, the expert, one half of the Data Bros, 1/3 of the Data Bros.
Does Jeff count?
Does Jeff count?
Hey, I'll tell you what, Data Bros the comment standard wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Jeff.
That's true.
I will tell you the whole story.
That's true, but I like to make funny jokes about Jeff, because when Jeff and I talk about wrestling, we fight really hard. So I'm going to diminish him for having bad wrestling opinions. But I love Jeff because he is one of the only people that, well, other than 3 of the people in this conversation, that I could talk wrestling about, I could talk wrestling with and like have really intense conversations. So, and I didn't even know that until 2 weeks ago, and it's been like a constant since then. So Brian, can you explain to people what the comment standard is? And more than that, I don't think people here maybe understand what a data standard is.
Yeah, that's wow, that's boiling the ocean. Can
you give us the elevator pitch?
So yeah, a data standard is just a standardized way of presenting information. So there's data standards all over the place. Just off the top of my head, BISAC, which is a standard for how you categorize books and graphic novels and everything like that. There's I don't know, I'm not good at this stuff, but there's standards that say like what measures and weights are for different things. Comet is a standard for comics. So, and previous to Comet, previous to 2020, we had a data standard which was called the Way Diamond Does Things, TM. There was TM. And then in 2020, Lunar and UCS came around, and suddenly there was the Way Diamond Does Things, TM, and now the way that Lunar and UCS did things. And those things weren't necessarily the same. Lunar pretty much adhered to all of Diamond's rules. UCS kind of did. I think they had some different stuff. It's been a while since I remember that. But when PRH came along, they, Penguin Random House, started doing things the way that the book market does things, which is like the book market has been around much longer than the comic market and has been digital much longer than the comic market. The digital stuff that we do, like the metadata that we get, came from Diamond as of about 2009. Previous to that, there's not much data around comics. You'll find stuff here and there, but it wasn't like formalized data the way it was in 2009. And one of the things that Diamond did in 2009 is it created the extended barcode for comic books. Before that, again, barcodes, if you look at a pre-2009 comic book, it may have 2 extra digits at the end, but every Amazing Spider-Man that has a barcode has the same initial 13 digits and then the month after that. And so that means that 1993's Amazing Spider-Man from January has the exact same barcode that 1994's Amazing Spider-Man from January would have. So obviously that's not great. So Diamond created this little standard. So once Penguin Random House came along and started doing things in an entirely different way than Diamond, we found a few things. First of all, they were doing new things that we'd never seen before, which was totally exciting. They were also not doing some things that Diamond had always done. So one of those was series codes. It turns out that Diamond had always created series code for books. Series codes can be inferred from the barcode, but Diamond had always created like a 5-digit series code. They also did that for graphic novels, which nobody was doing. And one of the first times that we kind of saw series codes breaking was after DC went exclusive to Lunar. There was a period there where Diamond was still creating all the series codes, and then suddenly Lunar started creating series codes. And we later discovered that Lunar's series codes were based off of DC's family codes, which means the month that Titans came out, and Titans Night Terrors came out, and Tales of the Titans came out, every one of those had the exact same series code, which meant that if you were pulling subs for somebody that just wanted Titans, you were suddenly pulling all 3 of those books. So that's not great. So that led to us realizing that we needed to standardize all this stuff. And Comics Pro kind of created a group. It's officially called the Comics Metadata Standards Working Group. So that group started developing a standard, and we worked with 90 different stakeholders. So those included comics retailers, publishers, distributors, a couple data scientists, dumb old me that just kind of knows this stuff and groks it enough to translate it amongst all the different people, and Django Boren, who also knows enough of this to translate it. Katie Pride from Books with Pictures in Portland, who kind of steered everything together. And then Jess Wells from Penguin Random House, who helped with a lot of the understanding of BISAC codes and all this categorization stuff. So yeah, we started, and this is 2 years now. So would that be 2023?
Yeah.
And then we had an entire year of meetings where we basically hammered out a standard. We presented that standard a year ago at Comics Pro. And then we've spent the last year like refining it and getting distributors to use it. And as of this writing, Penguin Random House is officially using the Comet standard, and Lunar is super close. I saw a news report from Comics Pro that really annoyed me I won't say which reporter, but they said the Comet standard is still far away. And I was like, no, it's not. And if you would have asked anybody that was on it instead of just writing stuff, you would have known better. Comics journalism. Anyway, so yeah, that's the Comet standard.
I am less political than Brian. This is the same person who was reporting things that were being said in blacked out presentations because they were being tweeted to or texted at by someone in the room who wasn't respecting the publishers. So let's just call comics journalism what it is. Sometimes it's very yellow.
Except I don't think it's the same person you think it is. It's another person who was actually in the room. We'll talk about that later.
No, this person was doing the same.
Oh, that's lovely. Lovely. So yeah, we created the standard. It is 122 fields. You only need 38 of them to actually create a product. but that's about what the kind of mandatory fields were before. The only thing is now we've kind of defined them a lot better. So like an example would be net pricing. Currently, the way that you figure out net pricing is that net priced items are either a J or a Z code. That's ridiculous. So in the Comet standard, there's now a Y or an N. Is it net priced? Yes. Is it not net priced? No. That's it. So a lot of this stuff is simplified, and you don't have to like know multiple codes to understand how things work. And yeah, we like I said, Penguin Random House is using it. It's super awesome. As they started creating it, it got better, and yeah.
Kyle.
Oh, Zed. Yes. Well,
no,
it is ZCN and not ZCN.
That's true. It is true.
No,
it's true.
I'm sure everybody in here has watched Stargate SG-1. They know what a ZPM is.
No, that's the joke. And by the way, that is actually a callback to a song by the Bare Naked Ladies, who are maybe the most Canadian thing not named the Tragically Hip. Anyway,
they're about as Canadian as you get.
Right. So the reason I wanted you to explain that, Brian, because I know that Comet Standard is a much bigger thing than we're trying to boil it down to. And I want to encourage everybody to go over to cometstandard.com and read about this, because it does change the way comics work. Like, I can't express enough how important data standards can be. And this is What Are Your Comics Trying to Tell You is the overall arching topic I have for the show. And I'm going to get to why that is my question here in a second. But Brian, I put a thing in the rundown, fun with barcodes.
Yeah.
And what I love, and when we talk about a barcode, the amount of data you can embed in some little black lines on the cover of a book. You said 122 fields.
Yep.
You can embed all 122 fields in a standard.
No. So you can embed a bunch, and basically a barcode is a unique identifier that can then be referred to in the data to discover all the rest of it. But do you want to come to my full barcode TED Talk? Because I can present it here if you want. It's really fascinating.
I would love that.
Are you guys
I'm feeling some of these guys would be like, no, but hit me. Give me some.
I'll give you the
TEDx where it's only 10 minutes.
I'll give you I'll even probably be able to do it in 2 minutes. So this is a comic barcode.
I want to try something. Go to how do I make this go, Jay? Ah, damn. The StreamYard rolled out a new piece of tech that I really want to try, but I can't make it work. So we're just going to go to add to stage, and then
it's behind us.
Right. This.
There we go. So I'll break down a barcode for you in a few seconds. So there are 5 different kind of blurbs of content in a barcode. The first one just denotes the approved number system. So they're 0, 1, 6, 7, or 9 are for products. 5 and 9 are reserved for coupons. 2 is used for random weight items. So if you go to the grocery store and you see a 2 at the beginning of something, it's something that's going to be weighed. I don't know why 9 is products and coupons. Oh, 5 and 8, that should say, not 5 and 9. Oh, bad typo, Brian.
Ooh, anyway, we're editing.
Yeah, right. The next 5 numbers are the manufacturer publisher code. So DC's is, I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but every publisher has a different unique 5-digit code. The next grouping, the 37687, that represents the they call it a product code, I think. Yeah. So a product code we use it as a series code. So if I take these first 13 digits together, they're going to make up a unique publisher and product code. So I can use that as a series code in place of making Diamond do this for us. The fourth one is a check digit, and this one's super cool. This is math, and you didn't think there'd be math today. The checksum is a algorithm that basically you add all the numbers before it, and it will give you the 5. And the barcode scanner can do this math in real time and figure out whether or not this barcode is valid or not. It's super cool that works like that. And then, so that's the first 11 digits. These final 5 digits are your supplemental code. And those are what allow a publisher to identify the issue, the cover, the printing of the periodical you hold in your hands. So if we go down here, there's 2 different ways that those can be done. Most publishers are going to use what we call IIICP, which stands for issue, cover, printing. Dynamite and Boom and a few others use IICCP, which is issue, cover, printing, which means that Dynamite and Boom don't think they'll ever get past 99 issues. They do think that they could have up to 99 covers, and they only anticipate having up to 9 printings. And so far, this works. Marvel does some interesting things with IIICP. The CNP no longer stand for cover and printing with them. They are just random numbers that they use for different things, and they have a whole algorithm that they use to figure out which cover is which. And it works for them. It's super confusing, and we try not to think too much about it. But yeah, that's what your barcodes do.
So with this information, and this is the part that I want to start kind of leaning into here. If you know who made a certain cover of a certain book, once all the data is exported, you can see, oh, okay, this is how many different versions of cover, this is how many different covers done by Mark Spears were done, and so how many sold this month, this year. Because if we know that the 3rd cover of this book is Mark Spears, we know the 9th cover of this book is Mark Spears, and then blah, blah, blah. Eventually you can extrapolate out that data to get to that point, right?
Yeah, you could, yeah. And that would be more from the data than the barcodes, though.
Right, but like, again, you can use the barcodes are what tell the system that data, right? Give the information to the system breakdown.
Think of a barcode as a pointer, and it's just like it's the key that is pointing to the information in the data system. So it says you actually want 761941371, blah blah, and that is Mark Spears Monsters number 12 cover A. Mark Spears.
Right. But then using that data, you can actually break things out by how many copies of a certain book with a certain cover artist your shop sells.
Yep, for sure. Yeah.
And will the Comet standard flow back and forth across the industry? So one of the problems that I remember having with Diamond is that Diamond had their metadata, and then Diamond released the numbers, and Diamond broke down the numbers, and everybody just had to trust Diamond. Will PRH be able to see, here's how many units we sold to comic shops, and here's how many units the comic shop sold?
Yes and no. I think so. One of the big reasons that one of the big carrots we gave for creating this standard was that we wanted to be able to get sales numbers easier. And part of that was because if we're not working on normalizing the data, we can spend those cycles doing more interesting things. And one of those things is figuring out sales numbers. PRH already knows how many copies of Mark Spears monsters they sold? Oh, the answer is 0. It would actually be Lunar and Diamond who sold that. But they know it's getting that to a clearinghouse, getting that information to a clearinghouse where we can kind of reserve all that information and be able to send it back out. And that's a project that's kind of underway right now. So,
but one of the hiccups that we had, right, was there were times where Marvel would send you a matching order of something. So Riri Williams Ironheart #1, for instance, you ordered 25 copies. Marvel is sending you 25 free copies. Well, now all of a sudden that book sold way better than you would expect, because this is how many copies were sold to retailers. But retailers might be sitting on 30 copies.
Yeah.
So it didn't actually sell well. It sold as expected, but because Diamond is doing all of the data breakdown, they're not following the path all the way to the end of the line.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole other bottle of wax, because what you're talking about is sell-through numbers instead of sell-in numbers. And traditionally, the comics industry has only ever reported on sell-in numbers. What are the numbers that were sold to comic stores? Sell-through numbers require a lot of fun things like points of sale systems and standardizing how we're going to get that reporting out of it. Full disclosure, Managed Comics is already like knee deep in that project and working on it, and has been for 6 months with Adam Freeman of Prana DM. So yeah, we've created the fan confidence rating, which actually shows pre-orders and subscriptions for books and how many they are 3 months before the books actually come out, and 3 weeks before, and then on release day. The second part of that is getting more of the actual what sold off the shelf after. And we also have a retailer confidence level, which is different than the fan confidence level. From that, you're saying like customers have subscribed to 75 copies of this, and the retailer added an additional 90, which means that the retailer is more confident in that than the fans are. And then the reverse can happen, where, got a book that's got 33 subscribers and retailers are only adding 2 copies. It shows you kind of confidence from both sides of the track. So those are things we're working on as well. And I've championed this idea for a long time, because I'm a big believer that the number you can change is the number before it gets printed. After it gets printed, now we're just playing that's just score, right? Like it's fun to know what the score was the next day, but it's more interesting to be able to influence the score before the game is done. So this whole thing of fan confidence rating and the retailer confidence rating gives the publishers the ability to influence that before the FOC date and start changing their marketing. So that's our ultimate goal, is to get that information out in that window before the FOC, so that the publishers can actually change the conversation.
I'm very excited for this. By the way, that part, just like the hair on the back of my neck is standing up at being able to look at fan confidence versus retailer confidence.
Right.
And being able to look at, now I get Adam's bar charts, I get Adam's line charts, and those are really helpful, but will we be able to break it down more specifically at some point? Do you plan on?
Yeah. And my hope is that within Managed Comics, you'll actually be given information. Like if you were on, so this is Mark Spears Monsters is such a perfect example, because like my shop in January, when I first took it over, I think we sold 6 Mark Spears Monsters. And then February we sold like 14. And now this month we've got like 28. And that's a crazy trajectory when you think about it, right? But if I would have known that other stores were seeing an increase in Mark Spears Monsters way back in January, I probably would have ordered more heavily. And being able to see that you are missing out on stuff like that early will really help. One, it'll help move more units, but 2, it helps retailers order more accurately. Because I don't want to be sitting here on, every month now I'm sitting on 10, 15 absolutes, but I'm losing out on sales of stuff that like Mark Spear's Monsters, that if I had more copies, I could turn those over quickly. But if I watched trends, I would see that kind of stuff.
Well, and honestly, that's one of the biggest things about a data standard. With a data standard, you're able to give context to that data universally across the board. Everyone can see the same things, and then you get true information. That's I always talk about this. I'm an analyst by my day job, and everybody talks about, oh, I want the data, I want the data, I want the data, I want the data. No. You want the information.
Yeah,
there is a difference. Information is data with context. Data is raw. It isn't worthless, but it's worthless to most people. You have to know how to contextualize that data to make it valuable to most people.
Yeah.
And that's what's so cool about this is it's giving that opportunity to contextualize and even pre-make dashboards and queries and all those cool things to bring to the masses, to these stores that don't have the ability to sit there and catalog and check their sales. And it's one or two people in a store that sells maybe 50 copies of Batman a month, but they get enough and their overhead's low enough they can survive and they make a so that's where that really comes in, and it really kicks in fun because it just you get to dig in and you can find all sorts of incredible things with that standardized data that everybody's participating in.
Right. And guys, by the way, if you have questions, like if Brian or Pat or I or Jay says something that sparks something and you have a question, put in the comment. Jay is starring those. We're going to come back to those in a little bit. And kind of break them down and let unless there's something that we need to address right this second. But I wanted, Pat, you said something to me when we were talking about doing this show that a former coworker had said that kind of leads me into my next angle here about data.
And you're going to ask me to remember what I said.
Yes. If you're not collecting data, you're not marketing.
Oh yeah. No. If you're not measuring, you're not marketing.
You're not marketing.
Yeah. Like if you're not getting the return on the investment, you don't know what you're marketing. If you're marketing, you don't know if marketing's effective if you're not measuring it.
Yeah. You can't market if you can't measure.
Right.
Yeah. So a story sort of hit the fan with retailers in the last 36 hours. And I don't want to go into it too deep, but a major creator made a comment about how retailers don't order enough copies of their particular books to sell. That their books sell well, and the reason that they're sought after on the secondary market, and the reason that they're hold on, Ed, I will help you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now that we've done that for Ed students, and my initial reaction was, this is a problem of measurement. This is a problem of data. There is no standardization right now that says this artist rates this many sales in a month. This creator rates this many sales in a month. This writer rates this many sales in a month. Right? I don't have a way to say, oh, Zdarsky is selling more books right now since they announced his Captain America than he was a month ago. I need to maybe be ordering more because there's more interest. Right? And so my question to Brian, to Pat, to Jay, to the chat, when you go to order books, and Brian is a retailer, Pat and Jay as fans, the chat as fans, when you go to order books, would having that information, and Brian already kind of answered this, would it change the way you look at creators?
For me, 1,000%. I mean, I've gone heavier on Mark Spear's covers of other books because of how well he sells with Mark Spear's Monsters. So I can't even remember what it was. I just added a bunch of extra copies too, because he's doing some something from Marvel or DC coming up really soon, and I added a bunch of extra copies to that because I know they'll sell. What you say though is really interesting because part of the standard, one of the parts of the standard, is that we want to move all creators towards ISNI, which is a standard for creators, writers, and artists. Costs you $25 to get an ISNI number, and the writer or artist does it themselves. They pay $25. Now they own that ISNI number. So Stephen King's ISNI number is like 1724, right? And his ISNI number will always be 1724, whether he does a Marvel comic or a Penguin Random House book or a Tor book. It doesn't matter. His ISNI number is always the same. Right now, Chip Zdarsky can be Chip Zdarsky, Zdarsky Chip, Stephen Murray, like all these different names, right? That could be referencing Chip Zdarsky. So there's no standard right now for how it could be Chip, Zdarsky, or it could be Chip, Zdarsky. So having that standard around the creator names will help us to merge those all together as well. And instead of using like the random diamond genres and categories, the 13 categories that Diamond created back in 2009, we're going to use BISAC, which is the Book Industry Study Group's categorization list, of which for comics there's like, I don't know, 80 or 90 different individual things that we could. So not just superhero. It could be like superhero apocalyptic story or superhero futuristic story, which then means you can start to subdivide all that category. What's selling better? Is it superhero apocalyptic or superhero futuristic? Just having more granular controls will give us a lot more data in the future as well.
So, Pat, if you knew that a certain artist was trending up at the moment, so again, we'll use Mark Spears because Mark Spears is a great example. 2 months ago, I'd never heard of him.
Same.
And now Mark Spears is the hottest name in the world, right? It's Scotty Young the month before the babysit, right? Like I knew Scotty from a drink and draw in Chicago as this guy who was doing this really cool kind of art style. And then the babysit, and he's the biggest name in the world. Ed, shoot me a message. If you knew somebody was trending up and you had data to support it, would that change your reading habits? Would it change your buying habits?
I don't know if it changes my habits as a reader, but I wear another hat, and it definitely has impact on that industry. I think, running a very comic-centric comic convention and a show that has really been lucky, and this was even before I was part of the show, lucky to have a lot of like really the young guns before they were the young guns. Like we got the hot tip on Brian Stegman before Sif even came out.
Did you call him Brian just now?
It's Ryan.
I said Ryan.
Okay, but
it sound like a D.
Yeah, I know you, like me, have called him Steggy for too many years.
That's fair.
His first name is sometimes feels weird coming out of your mouth.
Fair. So having Stegman years and years ago, and having some of those guys, Dennis Hopeless,
Ryan Lee was at your show before he was anybody.
Well, Ryan Lee lives here.
Right. It's still a factor. Like
Ryan Lee's one of our locals, so but yeah, I mean, having that information from a like, oh look, this person's like trending way hot, through the 5 months leading up to our show. That may be a like, hey, can we get you here? Can we get you booked? Can we get you, having that and having that ability to say, hey, oh no, we're seeing this huge uptick because we have a wonderful comic shop in our town. It's associated with the show. But we're a small town. We're not a big area. We're a tourist town. And so that it kind of makes it one shop. It's small, and they sell what they sell, and we're not necessarily indicative of the greater comics market. So having that data to be able to say like, oh yeah, like, oh, look at that, like, Mark Spears Monsters has gone from 6 to 15 to 25 to 50. What is it? Who is this guy? That's a great value to comic conventions to really target their guest bookings each year.
Brian, is there any regionalization? Like, are you going to be able to say, you know what, Angel Medina is doing really big in the Midwest because Angel's doing 30 conventions from between Chicago and Pittsburgh over the next year and a half, and he's selling really well in the Midwest?
Yeah, so at this point, we won't be able to. Our data is double blind, meaning that we just literally we increment the value every time that somebody subscribes or unsubscribes to somebody something, but we don't track it per store, and that was deliberate because you have to ask for a lot of permission in order to do that. So we would have to have an opt-in system. And right now, it's not even an opt-out system. It's just a raw data. Yeah,
and that's fair. I think I mentioned this the first year when the data working group got together. When I worked in the record industry, we could, because of the way they had data, we could say that, one of our acts, Bad Religion, is selling really well in Muncie, Indiana right now.
Yeah.
Because they've got a record store there that's hand selling the record like crazy. Maybe we should try and book a show in Fort Wayne or in Indianapolis because we can't go to Muncie, but we can get close to service that market.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but I'm pretty sure that Adam is working on those individual deals.
Yeah.
And then he will have that kind of information.
Sure.
And he would know that person is a managed comic store. So we could basically remove that number from the overall data set.
Blind data is better data. I mean, because it's pure and it's not manipulative,
not biased. Yeah.
Right. So I'm good with not having it. I just thought it was a question that I wanted to ask.
I think it's an important thing to have at some point too, because like I was talking to SourcePoint Press years ago about data, and they were one of the first ones that was like, we find that we do really, really well in Michigan and Ohio and kind of the area that we travel to shows to. And then, yeah, it would be great for that kind of stuff for publishers to have their show plans and things like that.
Right.
And there's still ability to anonymize that data with region codes or something like that. Of like, if you do like 8 regions for across the U.S., it's still fairly anonymous.
Sure.
As long as you make the sample size big enough, you still anonymize the data.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Like right now, we're at 235 stores, which is a decent number. But when you break that down, if there's probably a couple of regions where we only have 5 or 6 stores, so it'd be pretty easy to figure out the Tennessee area is, infinity flux only.
Right. No, and right, and that's why I like anonymous data better, right? Because it doesn't weight anybody heavier or lighter. You don't get those weird errors in the end of the spreadsheet because you have one data point. So I want to have some questions. I think we're probably going to have a short show tonight, which is fine. Which is good because I know Brian and I are both still not 1,000,000% after getting whatever crud retailers bring with them to events.
I slept 18 hours yesterday. 18 hours. I've not slept 18 hours in like my adult life.
Well, I haven't slept 18 hours since I got back from Comics Pro.
Yeah,
it's been one of those things. So, TJ, have you guys seen that you can use the Python module in Excel 365 to create barcodes and QR codes?
Ooh.
That would be handy if you were trying to maybe barcode using the standard like Silver Age books or something. You're trying to create your own barcode.
Yeah, that'd be super cool.
That's super fun. Is Penguin releasing their shipping this week lists using the standard?
Does Penguin even have shipping this week list?
I don't know. I don't like the PRH website. It gives me hives. I said that to Tyne, and she almost slapped me. But
yeah.
Shout out to Tyne for Penguin. I love Tyne.
I don't think they have one yet. The best place for shipping this week list is still called Comic List, I think it's called. Talk amongst yourself and I'll find it.
There are a lot of options out there for shipping this week lists.
The most accurate one I know of, though, is the one that Charles LePage has been making forever.
Right. Yes, and Charles is probably the best. But Previews World still has one. And guys, Previews World is still pretty functional, despite the flux there. It's also not on the list of things that will be up for auction.
Yeah.
So you never know. Previews World might just become a resource, like Overstreets or something. But League of Comic Geeks has one that is wildly inaccurate, but it's if you're just looking for cover art.
If you know of a managed comics store, there's every single store has a release dates page, and that is accurate as of the day that the releases take place. As of the Monday before the releases are out. So yeah, it's very accurate. Go find your local managed comic store.
Right. Hey, Jeremy Shore's here. Hi, Jeremy.
Jeremy Shore. Yeah, he's not wrong.
No, he ain't.
Better than Cobalt.
I love technology nerds. They're the best.
Using the standard, stores will be able to track sell-through, right? So they'll be able to collect sell-through versus distributor sales. We kind of talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's not really so much a standard issue as it is more of a. I mean, there are certain things that the standard will definitely help. Like I said, names is a big one. Creator names, characters. So in the standard, there's characters. There's storylines in the standard. I guess that's one of the things I could have gone through is like, what are the interesting things that we added that fans would really like?
Well, we'll save that for another time when we both want to talk. But what are some of the most common queries you run with the current data we're collecting, Brian?
Mostly it's pre-sales, subs, and retailer pre-orders, and then there's also sub sold, shelf sold, and retailer sold. So those are our biggest queries we do. Let's see, what other queries do we have? Yeah, we can run queries against different categories, against different publishers. We can pit publishers against each other. Select different date ranges and activity periods. That's a fun one. So we can look at an activity period is like, let's say between January 1st and January 31st, what happened during that period. But what we want to know is what happened to books that were on FOC during that same period. So why that specific period? Because that can tell us really quickly what effect marketing had on those things. If we pick a longer period for books that have an FOC at that, then we can tell like kind of long tail, like what was the initial solicitation versus what was what changed at the end of the period.
Cool. Pat, do you have any questions? Has anything here sparked any of your synapses that I know you think about this kind of stuff in an unreal amount of time? By the way, the reason I wanted Pat on the show is Pat was one of the first people to ever like really dig in with me on CRM. which is such a big part of what we do here at the EXP, right? Is our CRM processes are not perfect, but understanding your customers and understanding your relationship with your customers and getting your customers to react the way you want them to react in some way, aka fill out your forms, people, or Amy will kill us all. Like, is so important. So I knew the data conversation would strike something in Pat. So do you have anything?
Well, I think it's so, there's so many pieces and parts to this, and I think really I haven't done it yet. I'm gonna probably sit on the Comet Standard website and start reading all of the fun and exciting materials on there.
It really is a nice website for what could be a really dry topic,
but really
not
just to understand all the pieces and parts that are being put on there from what data is going to be available, because I think the transformations you can do with a lot of this data, 100 and how many fields was it, Brian?
122.
122. I mean, there's going to be some stuff you're going to be able to just look at and go and see all kinds of interesting patterns and stuff like that. And I think more it sparked interest just to learn more about the standard and see what's what and just really dig in, because I think it's going to become and obviously the hardest thing is always going to be get buy-in and get everybody kind of all rowing together to get this to be as effective as possible.
Yeah, the good news is we have all four major distributors, including Diamond, Penguin Random House, Lunar, and Universal.
Is Diamond actually a major distributor anymore?
They were.
That was mean. That was mean.
They are for the next 20 days.
Yeah, and a vast majority of publishers actually contributed to it. So everyone kind of understood how important this was, especially none of us knew at the time when we first started this 2 years ago that Diamond was going away. But what we did know was that data was so fragmented at that point that it was taking us hundreds of hours a month amongst all of us just to normalize that data. And that was the time that I hated the most, because it was useless rework that I knew many of my colleagues were doing, and it frustrated me so much that we had Chad Rivard who was finding all these errors, and then he would fix it in one place, and then I would fix it in my place, and somebody else would fix it in their place. And so one of the things we built was a rapid response team where anybody gets errors, they send it to us, and then we reach out to the distributor and have them fix it and have them rap the publisher on the knuckles gently, just gently, and say, don't do this again. Thou shalt not, repeat a issue sequence number. And what that means is, instead of me fixing it just for my system, when I fix it, it gets fixed for everybody's system. So that was a huge win for us. And all the distributors and publishers understood that was something that we just couldn't afford to keep on doing forever.
And I remember, and this was maybe the moment that it snapped for me in my brain as to how really transformative this would be, is watching Philip Sablik sit in the back of the room and just repeatedly hearing the panes of glass in his brain break.
Yeah.
As things got explained, right? Because Philip is one of these guys who is really cutting edge in a lot of aspects of the way he handles his business in this industry. But at the same time, he was pretty entrenched in the way Boom Studios had operated, in the way the publishers he'd worked with had operated. And to hear and to be able to literally see in his eyes the layers of, well, that's how we just do it, getting peeled away and going, we can be better, was so important. And to hear Chris Powell from Diamond be full-throated, oh, this is important. I don't know that we can do anything about it because Diamond, but Chris being supportive of it was a big thing. And that was the moment it snapped for me that this is going to be transformative.
The moment it clicked for me was when we scheduled our very first meeting 2 years ago on a Friday at 6 p.m. And I expected to walk into a boardroom or to a room and have like 7 nerds at the front of the row. And there were 85 people in that room. And I was like, honest to God, I was flabbergasted. Like,
Is this
I
me
didn't even
running
know that was
around the room at this in this?
Yeah, you remember that? Yeah. 2 years ago, you were running the microphone around the room.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was insane. And I never in a million years would have expected that much participation. That's when I was like, shit, I think we might be onto something. And then afterwards, the number of publishers that walked up to me and said, thank you so much for doing this. This is going to change us. And they were like, everyone from Cadantia to Scout to Philip definitely came up to us afterwards. The Comixology guys like Chip and
David.
John and David. Well, it was Chip and John who came up and were like,
oh, David had already left by this point. You're right.
Yeah. And they were just like, we want to share some stuff with you that we learned doing Comixology. And I was like, awesome. And yeah, it was amazing. It was so cool to see that. And I thought we were just working on, a cute little thing that would save me some time.
Well, and here's what's fun. And maybe this will perk Jay's ears up a little bit because Jay has said a total of 0 words. I've been counting. The thing that Comet does is it lets the experience change the way we do things in our streaming. Because now all of a sudden with data standards, we can hopefully report our data, our information, but at the same time, we can standardize across our sellers. So if you buy something on Monday night with Comet Collectibles and you buy something on Wednesday night or on Friday night with Nancy, that data is all going back to the end user, right? Is all going back to the pool of data, which will then help to influence and help to tell people, hey, these people might be over here on this silly little internet platform, but they're buying these books. Right now, we're on an island. And it will change the way we invoice. It will change the way we approach our live sales. It will change the way we do everything because everybody here is on board. Because if we all row the same direction, everybody wins, right? So there's opportunities to make Jay and I's lives easier because all of a sudden, instead of getting a Excel spreadsheet with 120 line items for a live sales show that we have to go and track down, it's all standardized somewhere. It's just a matter of
you can pull all the data in super quick for sure.
Right. You want a release date? Boom. There it is. You want, it's all here. So just real inside baseball for Jay and I, it's going to let us sleep at night a little more. A little more.
Now you perked Jay's zeros up.
Right.
Yeah. Well, this is one of those conversations where it's, I'm a nerd, but this is a nerd conversation that's a little out of my depth.
This is an alpha nerd conversation.
Well, it's
Omega level mutant.
Yeah. So it's best to sit back and listen. But from what I can tell, this is something that's going to help the industry, going to be helpful to the industry, an industry that I love. So if it's going to be good for comics and stuff, awesome.
The last bullet point I had on our thing was ordering. Guys, we've been preaching here for a long time about ordering, letting your shop know before FOC, which is the final day, shops can change their orders before they go to print. Right. It's important to tell your shop what you want. And by doing that, it lets, again, now that there's a data standard, it lets them feed into that retailer confidence. Because if you tell your shop you want something, now your shop's more confident in their sales numbers. And if you tell your shop you want something, now your shop knows how confident you as a consumer are. And it brings that point together to the point where the retailer confidence level and the consumer confidence level are the same or are equitable. So, and I keep going like this, but in my mind, it raises the roof. It raises the whole peak of what we can do. So, what are I'm not even going to ask the question. It's not worth asking because I think we answered it several times already. So, Ed asks, is there a default app or is it just an open database? Is there an open database? How can people who are in the industry access the data or access the breakdowns? And if they're not, how can fans and consumers interact with the results of the information?
Yeah, so right now we're keeping it at a distributor level, but we want to bring it down to the publisher level. And to do that, we're working on a validator, which would allow smaller publishers, especially ones that don't necessarily have distribution deals, to upload their information into the validator, which would then check all the formatting and everything, make sure it's right, and spit them back out files. And the carrot in that is that if you give us your information, we're going to send it back to you, not only in Comet standard, but also in a standard Diamond file standard, in a standard Penguin Random House standard, in a standard Lunar standard. So you'd get it back in all these different formats as well. And the reason that might be important is, let's say that you're using Mobi, you'd be able to actually pull that Mobi data in because the validator can just spit out different types of standards over time. So ideally, eventually, we'll have everything in this validator, and then that thing will have some sort of public API that will be fed out to the world.
So, not yet, Ed. And I know you're itching, but be patient, homie. Ed is Ed and TJ, by the way, guys, in the chat, and Jeremy, of course. Jeremy may be a little bit different because Jeremy's a retailer, but Ed and TJ are also huge data nerds. They're also really big at counting. So appreciate you guys being here. Brian, plugs. Tell us where we can follow you. Tell us where we can find you. Tell us where we can support you.
Do you mind popping up Jeremy's comment that's at 9:53 where he says, remember the whole point of Comet? Because it's a really good... So he said, remember the whole point of Comet is to have all the data look the same. That way the kinds of reports and databases you're talking about can all handle that data from all those sources. So that's a super good point. And that's probably the most important point here, is that the whole point was to get everything in the same shape. And that means not only from the same columns, but also the stuff inside of those columns has to be similar. Because right now, Marvel sends out all caps titles and everybody else sends out title case titles. So having all that stuff kind of standardized is super, super important. I love that comment, Jeremy.
Yeah,
good job.
I was going to call that out too, because data normalization, that's what that is. And it is the most important part of data. If the data isn't normalized, it can't be analyzed.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the part where you have to be most like the penguin from Blues Brothers, where you've got the yardstick going, no, bad, do it the same way.
And yet we can't hit people. We got to be super nice to them and say, the reason you want to do this is because we can get you sales numbers.
I mean,
so that's
can't hit people.
Right. But it's so important that you have to be stringent about it and strict about it. But you have to remind them why it's important that you're being strict.
Yeah, you need the carrot mostly, and at least a little bit of a stick.
Yeah, and the stick, honestly, is that your data will just become irrelevant. So that's, if you want to be part of the conversation, and one of the sticks is going to be that if you want data back out of the system, you're going to have to put data into the system. So it's both a carrot and a stick.
All right.
Can't play if you don't pay. All right.
So Brian, plugs. Where plug your shop, plug Manage Comics, plug all the things.
Yeah, if you're Canadian, check out Earth 519. We sell comics and comic collectibles all over Canada. I bought it back from my buddy in January, and I've been running it with my kids since, and it's been a learning experience, that's for sure. If you want to end up with a small fortune in comics, just start out with a large fortune. That's what I learned so far. Yeah, and then Managed Comics is my comic. It's not a point of sale system, but it's my comic subscription tool for comic shops. We're doing so many changes right now. We have a deal with Lightspeed, with Shopify. We're working on possibly an integration with RMS RMH, which doesn't look great right now, but we've got other options. And so if folks are looking to get off RMS or RMH, they should definitely talk to us.
Cool. And then the Data Bros podcast is out there.
It's on hiatus, but it's going to come back at some point.
You can listen to the old episodes.
Yeah, for sure. Is it? I don't even know what our URL is.
You literally, guys, go to wherever you get podcasts and type in Data Bros, and it's
that's
there.
True. DataBrosInc.com is our website.
Right, DataBrosInc.com. Is there any? And then Brian is a regular part of the once a month on Tuesday afternoons, Comic Industry Insiders Live that we have here on the Experience with Prana Direct Market Solutions and Adam Freeman. So that is a big fun show. That is also incredibly specifically nerdy a lot of the time.
Oh my God, it's so nerdy.
I love Adam. Adam,
he's good.
Such a great person. During when we were doing all the Zoom, and everybody was doing Zoom hangouts during all the lockdowns, hung out with Adam a number of times during those, and I just sit there and be like, I'll listen to you talk about the industry all day.
Yeah.
It's true.
He's so animated and fun, and he loves this industry. He absolutely loves it.
There's a joke I will tell you guys off the air about me and Adam and another person and the kind of the role we seem to hold in this business, and it's super fun. Pat, plug your things.
Cherry Capital Comic Con in Traverse City, Michigan. Reasonably close to Canada, but not quite.
Brian, you should come.
What? What are you? Stop whispering.
Okay,
so
Cherry Capital Con, it's a good time.
CherryCapitalComicCon.com, Memorial Day weekend, so May 23rd through the 25th in Traverse City, Michigan this year. We are just getting our guest rollouts going. We're gonna have Tom Waltz this year. We're super happy about that. So if you're in the Traverse City area, I'm biased. I know I'm biased, but it is one of the best shows that is going to concentrate on comics. We put comics forward. You will not find window vendors and chiropractors on our show floor. I will stand there with a sign before I will put one of those on my show floor.
It's true. He has trouble letting me in. So you know how that goes. But guys, two things also at Cherry Capital Comic Con worth noting: the Gary Reed Independent Creator of the Year Awards. We will be streaming that live here on the Experience when those are handed out. Last year, Miss Jen was nominated, so that's super fun. But check out the Gary Reed Independent Creator of the Year Awards, commemorating Gary Reed from Caliber Comics. And the other thing about Cherry Capital Comic Con is it's one of the few conventions where you can come and meet me, and I won't be angry at you for coming to meet me. Just saying.
Yes, he will.
No, I won't. But you probably will hear Pat and I just screaming at each other jokes about giants and other things. It's the only show that I make custom merch for every year. That is a direct insult at one of my dearest friends. So, guys, it really is a great family-friendly show. There's something for everyone, but it is very comic-centric. They have a great 501st Legion turnout. Like, I could sell the show all year, but just know. So
I have a super nerdy Michigan question. Pat, can you show us where Traverse City is?
I love that you asked. No, you're way too hot. No.
It's right here.
No. You're right here.
Oh, is it right here?
Right at the base of the pinky is Traverse City.
Yeah, you're right.
I'll be honest. I was trying to do this backwards and upside down while looking at my screen. So I'm just kind of like, where are my fingers?
I was actually surprised I got it to pop up correctly. I'm like, am I going to use the right hand to do this? Because you have to when you're on screen, you got to do it backwards. Because like usually when you're doing it, you're showing like.
Yeah. So Ed, you should come over too. I know it's not that far for you. Well, it's not that far for you. So anyway, thank you, Brian. Thank you, Pat, for being here. Thank you, the chat, for being amazing and collaborating and having questions. I know this is not our normal lighter, nerdy fare. This is more dense and more data driven, but more inside baseball. But the thing about the questions and answers is that sometimes people send me questions. And this was a question that was sent to me by someone outside of the chat about, hey man, why do sometimes I go into my local comic shop and XYZ? And I thought this was a great opportunity to talk about, well, probably because your comic shop doesn't know what your comic shop doesn't know, but there's a way that they can know. So thank you for being here, everybody. We will see you all next week. Tomorrow, Miss Jen will be here at 7 with What's in the Box. I know she's got some crazy collections that came in today that she'll be offering. The Geek Chat will be back tomorrow night with their geeky chattiness. And then Mel and Mauger in Vancouver for a convention, or they're somewhere for a convention. They're somewhere. So Edwin Papa and the gang will be hanging out on SketchUp. Friday afternoon, Matthias Lewis and I break down what's available for order. So you can call your comic shop, give them the data of what you want. They can put the data in their computer that they're buying it. And then we talked about this. Synergy. 1,000 points of light. Synergy. Anyway, we can all make each other better by tuning into the FOC show. Order up at 1:00 Eastern on Friday. 7:00 Eastern, Nikki will be back with the original art experience. I don't know what he's going to have. He didn't tell me this week, so I'm real scared I'm going to spend too much money. And then Friday Night Live with Nancy McCann from Comics Unlimited. Nancy has been doing this for forever. She knows everybody, and she's a great shop and will have great products. So
I just talked to her this week.
Yay!
She's in Tennessee, right?
Cleveland, Tennessee.
Yeah. She's a great person.
She's great. Awesome. And by the way, guys, like, remember, Nancy was Jim Lee's LCS for a long time. I'm just saying. Yeah. So, she knows what she's doing. So tune into that show Friday at 9. We will see everybody later on down the line. Thank you for being here. Peace out.
Join the party. Head over to our Linktree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.